should give. So our giving is like a seed. It's like a seed. You know, we have these envelopes. This is like a seed that we release, we plant, and there's inherent power within the seed. Inherent kingdom power within the seed. We don't know the full extent of what God will do, the lives that will be touched, transformed through our giving. I like to look at it this way. Susan, can you throw me that apple down there? You know, there we go. So we have this apple. We can, you can count the number of seeds in the apple, but you can't count the number of apples in the seed. You know, we could break open this apple. We could count the number of seeds in there, but if you take one of those seeds in that apple, you plant it in the ground, it would grow and it would produce harvest after harvest after harvest of apples. So our giving is like a seed. When we come to self-denial, we plant the seed, and we don't know the kingdom influence it's going to have, the lives that are going to be changed. And the biggest thing about this is that when we give to self-denial, we create an opportunity for people to be exposed to the gospel, to experience the love of Jesus. That's the biggest one. Yes, there's incredible things happening in communities and situations, schools and things like that. But people are hearing the gospel. We don't know the number of people who are going to hear the gospel about Jesus, who are going to experience his love through our giving. When we release that seed, people, isn't that amazing? People are going to hear the gospel as a result of us sowing this seed around the world. Many of us in this room, we're hoping that we're going to get to heaven one day. Amen? Who's looking forward to that? It's going to be good. Imagine you arrive in heaven, you walk through the pearly gates, and you begin to meet these people. And they are there as a result of the seed, that the financial gift that you gave. Because of your giving, they heard the gospel, and now they get to share eternity with you. Isn't that an amazing thought? The possibilities that are opened through our giving. So I would encourage you over the next few weeks. We've got about a month to our altar Sunday. So it's a few weeks. And, so I want you to come before God. As Paul said in that passage, you must each make up your own mind as to how you should give. It used to be called OSIMS, 1 week's salary on missionary service. And, and that's a big ask, I know, in today's climate, cost of living and everything like that. But I was talking to someone recently, and they said that they start saving straight away for the next year's self-denial. So it's like putting a little bit aside each week so that they can give 1 week's salary. Man, that was a moving moment for me. So what are the sacrifices we're going to make? As Susan shared before, what are we going to do so that we can invest in self-denial this year? I encourage you to get before God, pray about it, consider what your seed might be that you can invest this year. Over the next few Sundays, not every week, but we're going to hear from different people, not just the videos, but people from right here at SAJ who are going to come and share of their experience internationally, how they've seen God move in places around the world. And this morning, we've got Lt.Col Margaret Bateman, who's going to come and she's going to share a little bit of her story. So let's welcome Margaret as she comes today.
Flour was just about unobtainable. So bread was made once or twice a week only by the bakeries. So my job was, on a Saturday morning, to get up at 6 and go to the first bakery that was across from our place. I walked along the line until I found one of the men from the men's home, the men that lived on our property. They'd probably been in the line since Thursday or Friday. Once the bakery opened, I would get the maximum of 2 kilograms of whatever was being sold that day, and so would he. Then we would head to the next bakery, find our next person in line, and so on, all of us getting 2 kilos as we went past. We continued this until we'd done all the bakeries in town. They all opened at different times, so we had it all worked out. This bread was some of what they got, at night time, along with soup. We had up to 22 at any one time on our property. I had my name down at the butcher's down the road. And when you heard that there was meat coming, you went and stood in the line with your photo ID. You got whatever came in. Beef, fish, chicken, goat, mutton, horse, whatever it was, you took it. We lived like this for 3 years. During this time, I met people such as Fidel Castro, when he came on one of his many visits to the country. I also met Salvador Allende, who was the president of the country. I met him the day of a mass funeral. There had been a massive bus accident and 32 people from our community had been killed. 2 of those killed were students from our school. So my brother and I were asked to be part of the guard of honour beside their caskets during the combined funeral service. On Tuesday, the 11th of September of 1973, I went off to school in the morning. I normally went to school in the afternoon. You have so many kids, you do shifts. But so that we didn't have to go to school on Saturdays, we went on a Tuesday morning as well. Partway through the morning, when Mum and Dad showed up at school and told me to find my brother, we were going home. I thought something had happened to Mum. My father had already spoken to the principal to told him what was going on. But going to school that morning, I had noticed there were lots of military boys out. They had their machine guns, but that was nothing new to us. And the following week was Independence Week. So usually there was a higher military and police presence in the week before that. What I found out from Dad, there had been a military coup. The communists had been ousted. The Salvation Army in Kalama had a kindergarten for 200 pupils. And when the military and police parents started to come and get their children to take them home, Dad was told, go and get your children and bring them home. We, the 5 of us, were the only white people in a city of 80,000. We didn't know at the time, but our city had been the first to be isolated. All the roads in and out were closed, the phones had been cut off, and the radio was only playing music, and our governor and mayor were safely locked up in jail. What happened after that happened in a hurry. By 6 p.m. we were in full curfew, and we stayed like that for several days. It was an interesting time with the men from the home, as most of them were alcoholics and went into forced withdrawals. We were fortunate that we had a large property, so the football field got used an awful lot during those days. Once the curfew was decreased, and it was only from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., we were able to return to school. But things at our place changed. As there were police and military children in the kindergarten, we had 2 military guards on duty at our gate from when the gate opened at 7 till 6 p.m. These boys had machine guns with them. They liked coming to the Sallies because once the gate to the 12-foot fence was closed, they could come in. They were fed, as well as having water at any time they wanted. These young boys, only 18 and 19, were doing the compulsory military service, and most of them had just found out that their 1 year's conscription had now become 2. So they were very upset because most of them were way out of town and could not go home and see their families at all. When the gates were closed and the children were inside, they would often clean their weapons. And this is where, much to my mother's horror, I learned how to pull apart and put back together a machine gun. I wouldn't do it now, and I would hate my children to do it. A few weeks after the coup, while the military was looking through paperwork in the governor's office, some carbon paper was found. I know young people, you don't know what that is, but Google it, you'll find out. And on the carbon paper, at number 1 and number 2, were my father's name and the name of the Catholic priest. They were to be shot on the 18th of September. they would not agree to some of the requests or demands that were being made of them by the communist government. God intervened 7 days before that. These findings have had a lasting impact on my life. It showed me that when you place everything in God's hand, it all works out in the end, maybe not as you thought it might, but in His way. The faith that my parents had through this whole thing showed me how to trust God. I knew, I had been told I could trust Him, but they showed me that I could trust Him. We came back to New Zealand at the end of 1973 for a short holiday, and we returned home, back to Chile in 1974. People asked us, why? Are you crazy? No, that was home. So I lived in Santiago for 4 years, and it was during that time, I was at high school, I started battling with God and His calling on my life. I knew what I did not want to do, and that was be an officer. I came to New Zealand after living in Chile for 14 years, all of my schooling, and I started my nursing training. During this time, a Salvationist from another corps came nursing, and we became friends. Sometime later, I met her brother. I thought this was my way out, but God had other things on His mind. David and I developed a friendship, and in one of his letters, we wrote to each other in letters. He was in Wellington, I was in New Plymouth. He told me about his call to officership. Foiled again, yes. Well, I moved to Wellington because I wanted to work in a specialty area. So I moved to the Hutt Hospital, and I worked in the burns, plastic surgery and facial maxillary ward. During my time down here, we decided we'd get married. We went to training college with a 1-year-old child. From there, we were sent to Winton. It was a hard appointment, and on several occasions we wondered what on earth we were doing and how much easier non-officer life would be. After being there for 2 years, we were appointed to Wellington. David to the computer department, because I didn't have an appointment. They didn't know what to do with someone with 3 small children. But eventually I was given the responsibility of setting up the visitation of retired officers. I held that appointment for 11 and a half years, and I'm doing it again now. Over the years, there's been several changes of appointments, and while I worked as a nurse at the bridge, I got my degree. I was encouraged by Dr. Pat Hill to do this in my time rather than waiting till I had to do it in a hurry. This is hard for me. I learn by doing, not by books. But with the help of some very good friends, I graduated. In 2018, we got a phone call. Called to the TC's office. That usually means trouble. We were asked if we would consider overseas service. My answer, no. Been there, done that. I'd spent most of my growing up years out of this country. The information that where we would go was not forthcoming from IHQ, so we said until we can make an informed decision, we're not going anywhere. A few weeks later, another call to the TC's office, and we were asked, are you willing to go to Papua New Guinea? They wanted David as the SBA, but at that stage there was still no appointment for me. And by the way, you've got 24 hours to decide. Yeah. Our children knew that we had been asked to go overseas, but it was only then that we were able to say this is where they want us to go. So in 2019, we left for an appointment in Papua New Guinea. We went to Port Moresby. David went as the SBA, and by then I'd been told I was the chaplain to BPS, or Barocco Primary School, one of the best schools in the country, according to the education department. So yeah. I was told it was a school of 600 children. The thought of that scared me. That's a lot of kids. So in my second week there, I had to do training with the teacher assistants. It was school holidays, and they still have to go to school and prepare. So we did training on how we would do the Christian religious education part of the curriculum, what we would do and how we would do it. It was at this time I discovered there weren't 600 children, but there was over 1,000. That was even scarier, but I didn't really have too much time to think about it. There were 29 classes, and the ages ranged from 4 through to 17 and 18, all in the same playground and not very big. David's experience was hearing men behind him turning around and finding full-bearded boys in uniform because they were trying to get their grade 8 certificate. Our school was accredited, so they did sit the exams. The decision was made. We would have one lesson for the whole school, and I would prepare the expression work for the 4 different sections, the 4 different levels, from colouring in through to quizzes and word searches and all sorts of things like that. This was good because if the need arose, I could go into a class, do the lesson, and know what was going on. I often went in just to help, or just to see how they were doing and see where I could help them do some more. As a chaplain, I was also often called on to speak with staff or children around different issues. Health of their parents, sat with many children when they were told their parents had died. Finances, relationships. I don't know how many times my staff came to school with black eyes because their partner had hit them, because they deserved it. That for me was hard. There were also times when the conversation became very difficult, scary even, when sorcery was one of the issues. A topic I do not know a lot about and don't want to get to know about. But it was during those conversations I really, really had to rely on God and listen very closely to what he was saying. I'd only been at the school a few months. I was not asked, I was told, you are also taking on the responsibility of school administrator. This for me was a huge challenge. I'd never done administration as an appointment. So now I also had 94 staff to manage, responsible for a school, its finances, as well as continuing as a chaplain. Fortunate I had 2 offices, and if my administration office was too busy, I could hide in the other one, and no one ever thought of looking for me there, so I could actually get some work done over there. The people of PNG are loving, very loving people, and they're always willing to give of the very little that they have. We'd come home and find bananas by our door, or a pineapple, or, they'd just give you things because they wanted to, because they loved you. My staff, most of them did not live in very good housing. A metal shack with no electricity, no sewage, no water. There may be a communal tap, but it gets locked after a certain time, so often my staff would ask, can I take water from here? There was probably a communal long drop somewhere. And when you went visiting in some of the villages, that's what you had to use as well. Families live together. They try to make ends meet. And as there are no benefits, if you don't work, you have no money. So you go and live with someone who's got a house and got a job. And you expect them to look after you. We lived in a 3-bedroom unit, not overly big, but it was the same size as our neighbours. There were 6 houses of 3 bedrooms. The house right next door to us had 8 adults in it and a baby. House number 1, I really don't know how many were in that house, but there was at least 3 families, as well as elderly parents. There is a lot of overcrowding. These officers had a house, so the family moved in. And out of their small wage, were expected to maintain them. And due to culture, you don't ask them to go. You don't do that. It is a very religious country. Most people will classify themselves as Christians. Towards the end of our time there, I had someone place a curse on me, and that is very common. They had been terminated by HR, not me, from their job at the school because they had not showed up for work. This person was a Salvation Army soldier, and her mother was an officer. My deputy principal made me laugh when she told me, "It's okay, Colonel, you're white, the curse won't stick." My reply to her was, "I don't think it'll stick because I'm covered with the blood of Jesus. That's why it won't stick." She was a lovely and is a lovely Christian lady, but I think she was trying to make sure that I wasn't going to get too scared. It is a beautiful place. It is a beautiful people, but it is not a rich place. I've got some photos we're going to show. It was hard to choose what, because there are so many. So I'll explain what they are. So this here, the red lines, denotes the Salvation Army property in Boroko. Okay, that's where we live. So the little skinny part down that end, that is where you come in the gates to THQ. Now, the whole red bit is all fenced, okay? 24-hour security guards everywhere. You come through a little bit, and you've got a big roof. That's the Roy Bungay multi-purpose hall. We'll see some photos of that in a minute. You keep going. There is the school. But some of the schools over here, because there's not enough classrooms, so some is in THQ building as well as there. Then this little funny little bit here is a motel. And then you go down to that piece is there are 8 quarters, 6 3-bedroom places, townhouses and 2 bedrooms. But on the school property, there are actually 6 quarters as well. So you had quarters within the school grounds. Yep, next one please. This is THQ, main gate just in front of that van. Yeah, this is the school. Now that is the grassed area for over 1,000 children, and they're not allowed on it. Yeah. This is the MPH, as we call it. This is one of my assemblies. Please note the adults on the floor. Those are teacher assistants. The teachers will be sitting on chairs at the back. Each class has an assistant, and I was never allowed to sit on the floor. I had to sit on a chair because you're the colonel. The next one, this is where we lived. There's a grey ute, a car next door. The house right in front was ours. And Lynn that was on the video before, she lives in that house. And the one on this very end here, that is where Nigel Luscombe is currently living, in number 8. Yep. This is Papa. This is actually, there's a health clinic and some accommodation for the health workers. The next one, that is a brand new quarters that was built for officers at Papa. There's termites, so everything falls down over time. This is the Papa Hall, very proud of their hall. Note, no walls, just one at the back. And this is on the inside, it's gravel. So if you go to the mercy seat, you're kneeling on gravel. That hurts. This is a place called Kokorogoko. The wall on the back was actually falling down. The doors at the front were locked, but the wall on that side was non-existent, so you didn't actually have to go through the doors. You could just go through the wall. I think that's actually now been replaced. It was falling down. We were in there and we're going, yeah. And this is the main highway outside the hall. That's really bad when it's wet. That was dry, and the vehicle we were in that someone else was driving, and he'd driven it many times, was, yeah, it was a bit bumpy. So the next one is a short video. This is at the Lt.Col, where we went, and it is Colin, and he was leading that morning. This is the half-an-hour praise and worship before the church service. And then you've got between 2 and 3 hours sitting in the heat. So this is just a little bit of PNG. Praise and worship time in Pidgin. He'd been going like that for half an hour before church started. Please note the chairs, horrible, plastic, picnic chairs, but you can't have anything else because they die in the weather. Returning to New Zealand has been a huge challenge for us. I've got to be used to the idea of David being away so much. I don't really like it, but each time he goes away, I have to trust that God will care for him while he is away from home and me back here. We're also getting to the stage in our officership where we are approaching retirement. We were house hunting, looking for our first home of our own. Exciting and scary. David and I have been officers for 35 years. And of those, 33 years we've had separate appointments. Our officership has not always been easy, but God has always been there. Sometimes I've wondered, where's God gone? But that's when I realise he hasn't moved, I have. I'm the one that needs to come back and move closer to him. My challenge in life has always been, try to be to others Jesus with skin on. Something that I know at times I've not been very good at. But with God's strength, I can do anything. I just have to remember to ask for his strength. He has proved himself again and again to be faithful to his promises. My prayer is that I will be an influence on others in such a way that they want to know who my Jesus is. We have not been promised that it will be easy, but we have been promised that God will always be there. 2 Peter 3:9 says, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promises, as some understand slowness. He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance."